Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm excited to bring you something special. Naruto, starting with EMS, an original fanfiction that reimagines the world of Naruto in a whole new way. If you're a fan of Naruto, epic battles, and powerful dojutsu, you're going to love this. So grab your headphones, sit back, and get ready to dive into Naruto, starting with EMS. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any episodes. Let's jump right in.
Part 2 of Naruto starting with EMS. In front of Nan stood a 12-year-old boy with silver-white hair. The boy wore a mask that covered the lower half of his face, a short sword strapped to his back, and was dressed in a black one-piece ninja outfit. Around his waist was a belt with a ninja tool pouch hanging at the back. This was the person Nan had been waiting for, Hatake Kakashi. At this stage, Kakashi wasn't yet wearing the iconic Konoha flak jacket, nor was his forehead protector used to cover one eye. His gaze still carried a youthful brightness, untainted by the indifference he would wear in the future. Though the Kakashi before him didn't perfectly match the version from Nan's memories, that unmistakable silver hair and distinctive mask left no room for doubt. Seeing a beloved anime character from his previous life come to life before his eyes, Nan couldn't help feeling a surge of excitement. Of course, excitement aside, Nan didn't forget why he was here. As he saw Kakashi heading into the hospital, he quickly moved to intercept. After all, he'd waited long enough for this meeting. Yo, if it isn't Kakashi. Long time no see. Kakashi turned, surprised to be greeted by a child. But upon recognizing the speaker, his expression softened. It was Uchiha Nan, the genius of the Uchiha clan. A prodigious medical nin who had treated his injuries a few times in the past. So it's you, Nan. It has been a while. I stopped by a few times before but didn't see you. Where've you been this past year? I've been in Konoha the whole time, Nan replied with a smile. Just busy with classes at the academy. What about you? Looks like you just got back from a mission outside the village. Nan was curious about what kind of mission had kept Kakashi away for over 2 months, though he knew better than to expect a real answer. Most ninja missions were confidential. Surprisingly, Kakashi actually offered a bit of insight. He even complained a little, saying the mission had originally been a simple one, but things changed halfway through, making it far more complicated. What should have taken half a month ended up dragging out for over a month. This puzzled Nan. Was the original Nan really that close to Kakashi? Why would Kakashi be so open with someone he wasn't tight with? What Nan didn't know was that Kakashi had always held a good impression of him. Kakashi, after all, had graduated from the Ninja Academy at the age of 6, a genius who set the record for the youngest graduate in Konoha history. But being a genius often meant being alone, isolated at the top. Then, one day, after getting injured during training, Kakashi ended up in the hospital, where he was shocked to discover the medic treating him was just a young child. After asking around, he learned more about Nan and was astonished to find that Nan might be even more talented than himself. From that moment, Kakashi felt a subtle bond, an unspoken sense of kinship between prodigies. He began paying more attention to Nan, even seeking him out personally for treatment whenever he came to the hospital. Then one day, Kakashi noticed Nan had seemingly vanished. Multiple hospital visits yielded no sight of him. After some inquiries with the doctors, he found out Nan had become an orphan. This hit close to home. Kakashi had lost his mother at a young age, and after his father's suicide, he too had been left to fend for himself. But Nan had lost his parents even earlier. In a way, he had suffered more. This time, Kakashi had sustained minor injuries during a rushed mission, injuries that hadn't been properly treated due to the urgency of the assignment. Worried they might lead to complications, he came to the hospital as soon as the mission ended. He hadn't expected to run into Nan again, and naturally, he wanted to catch up. Nan was still a bit surprised, but he now realized that his predecessor's relationship with Kakashi was better than he had assumed. That was good news. It gave him a better shot at asking Kakashi for help with lightning release training. You're here for treatment? Nan asked. Yeah, Kakashi nodded. Got a few injuries that weren't properly handled. Didn't want to risk anything. Well, perfect timing. I'm free, I'll treat you. Kakashi didn't hesitate to accept the offer. Nan led Kakashi to a quiet spot where they could sit. As he tended to Kakashi's wounds, they chatted casually, talking about how each other had been, how life had changed over the past year. Once Nan was confident that Kakashi had a good impression of him, he casually brought up his own training struggles. By the way, Kakashi, Nan said as if offhandedly, I heard you specialize in lightning release, right? I was wondering if I could ask you a few things about chakra nature transformation, specifically for lightning release. Lightning release? Kakashi blinked. Isn't the Uchiha clan all about fire release? Why are you training in lightning techniques? Kakashi was puzzled. He knew Nan was a medical nin. If he were going to train in ninjutsu, wouldn't it make sense to start with what his clan excelled at? Nan explained that he had already reached a high level in fire release techniques. But after discovering that he had a knack for lightning release as well, he wanted to develop that further. Upon learning that Nan also had a natural talent for lightning release, Kakashi, one of the few lightning style users in Konoha, felt an unexpected sense of kinship with him. Still, he offered a word of caution. Nan, you haven't even graduated from the ninja academy yet. Isn't it a little early to be training in a second chakra nature transformation? Most genin rarely touched chakra nature transformations, let alone a second nature. Typically, that kind of training didn't begin until one reached the rank of jonin. Even Kakashi himself had only recently started training in fire release, because he was preparing to become a jonin soon. From his perspective, the fact that Nan had already mastered one chakra nature at the age of 6 was astonishing. There was no real need to rush into learning another. Sigh, Nan let out a soft sigh and began explaining his situation. His ninjutsu and genjutsu training were progressing smoothly, but due to his young age, he hadn't made much headway in taijutsu. That's when an idea had struck him. What if he combined lightning release with taijutsu, creating something entirely new? Then, a thought flashed through Nan's mind. In the original story, Kakashi developed Chidori in Konoha year 47, just before becoming a jonin. And now, it's year 46. That meant Kakashi had likely already begun working on Chidori. Nan seized the opportunity. He briefly described the basic theory behind the lightning-infused taijutsu technique he wanted to develop, hoping to gauge how far along Kakashi was in his own research. Sure enough, Kakashi was visibly shocked upon hearing Nan's idea. The technique Nan was proposing bore a striking resemblance to what Kakashi himself had been conceptualizing. What's more, Nan's theory was even more developed than his own. Nan, Kakashi said urgently, you won't believe this, but I've also been working on a technique just like the one you described. He then elaborated on his idea, a lightning-style jutsu that combined overwhelming piercing speed with destructive power, a technique that could obliterate an enemy in a single strike. Nan's heart stirred with excitement. Just as I thought, Kakashi really has started developing Chidori. He had intentionally shared his concept in the hopes of drawing Kakashi into a joint effort. Feigning surprise, Nan said, really? In that case, why don't we work on it together? While Nan was confident he could eventually develop this taijutsu technique on his own after mastering lightning release, having an experienced lightning-style user like Kakashi on board would drastically shorten the process. Likewise, Kakashi also recognized the benefit. To develop Chidori successfully, he'd need someone with an in-depth understanding of the human body, someone who could figure out how to channel chakra in a way that maximized stimulation while minimizing physical harm. In the original story, that person might have been his teammate, Rin Noera, a medical ninja. But now, Nan clearly made for an even better candidate. Kakashi had the same thought, and the two quickly agreed to collaborate on developing the technique. Nan was thrilled. What had started as a simple attempt to get lightning release training from Kakashi had turned into something far better. Kakashi would now personally help him train. That was far more efficient than training alone. Kakashi had his own reasons too. Since he was currently training in fire release, he figured he could learn a thing or two from Nan about the Uchiha clan's fire-style techniques in return. After settling their plans, and with Kakashi's wounds properly treated, the two said their goodbyes, agreeing on a time and place for their next meeting. Nan arrived at the training ground slightly earlier than the agreed time. Not long after, Kakashi showed up as well, punctual to the second. Looks like he hasn't picked up Obito's bad habit of always being late yet, Nan thought to himself. The two greeted each other casually, skipping any small talk and jumping straight into business. To develop a new jutsu, Nan first needed to master high-level lightning release chakra nature transformation. To speed things up, Kakashi agreed to personally tutor him. At this point, Nan made a suggestion: they could both use shadow clones during training. That way, Kakashi could assign just one clone to teach him lightning release, and Nan could return the favor by having one of his own clones teach Kakashi fire release. This way, they wouldn't interfere with each other's schedules, and they could both make rapid progress. Kakashi was genuinely impressed by the idea. Why didn't I think of that before? Shadow clones for training. Brilliant. They each created 3 clones. One clone was assigned to teach the other. The main body and the remaining 2 clones trained independently with help from the other's teaching clone. It wasn't that they couldn't create more clones. Naruto, for instance, could summon dozens or even hundreds and complete chakra nature transformation in record time. But Nan had already learned through personal experience that quantity wasn't everything. Naruto needed that many clones because, frankly, he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. He lacked complex thought processes, so he needed sheer volume to stack up experience points. Moreover, Naruto's simple mind also meant less mental strain from each clone's feedback. But Nan and Kakashi were different. Not only did they lack Naruto's monstrous chakra reserves, they were also far smarter, which ironically made using too many clones dangerous. If each clone came back with complex, detailed thoughts and insights, the sheer mental overload from dispersing them could fry their brains. After weighing all this, they decided that 2 clones each was the most efficient number, just enough to accelerate progress while keeping their minds intact. Nan, let me see where you're currently at with your lightning release training, Kakashi said. In the 2 months he'd waited for Kakashi, Nan hadn't been idle. He had already begun experimenting with lightning release and had made some noticeable progress. If his earlier level was equivalent to the lightning style, spark finger jutsu, then he had now progressed to what could be jokingly called lightning style, spark palm jutsu. He demonstrated this jutsu to Kakashi with a smug look of satisfaction. Kakashi stared at him, speechless. Why do you look so proud? That's barely scratching the surface. Your lightning release is average at best. Honestly, you're still at a beginner's level. And to be frank, you've been going about it all wrong. We're better off starting from the beginning, Kakashi said bluntly. Nan's expression sank. He had carefully modeled his lightning release training after the way Naruto trained in wind release in the original story, breaking the process into 2 major phases with a structured training plan. He thought he had at least completed stage 1. But apparently, to an expert like Kakashi, it wasn't even worth mentioning. Unaware of Nan's frustration, Kakashi continued, reminiscing about his own early days. Back when I first started training in lightning release under my father, it took me around 3 months to fully master it. That was considered extremely fast. Nan curled his lip. Pfft. 3 months. That's it? I thought you were supposed to be elite. Sasuke managed it in just 1. Of course, he conveniently forgot that Sasuke was much younger when he started training, while Kakashi had begun lightning release training at a more mature age. Kakashi glanced at him and added, judging by your current progress. I'd say it'll probably take you half a year. Seeing the contempt on Nan's face, Kakashi couldn't resist giving him a little jab. Though, deep down, Kakashi thought, this kid is sharp. He might just end up learning it even faster than I did. The moment Nan heard Kakashi's estimate, he was furious. Even someone like Sasuke, a so-called civilian-level prodigy, who didn't awaken his Eternal Mangekyō until age 17, mastered lightning release in just a month. But I, a monstrous genius who awakened the Eternal Mangekyō at 6 years old, need half a year. What kind of joke is this? Even 2 weeks should be enough, let alone a month. Of course, he didn't say any of this out loud. On the surface, he put on a respectful and humble expression, nodding as though receiving sacred wisdom. He realized Kakashi was messing with him on purpose, probably because he'd caught that split second of disdain earlier. Sure enough, seeing Nan's obedient expression, Kakashi seemed pleased and loosened up a little. Well, if you keep using the shadow clone training method, with you and 2 clones working in tandem, then maybe, just maybe, you'll finish in a month, Kakashi said. Nan almost burst out cursing. Seriously? That math is insulting. Half a year is 6 months. Dividing that by 3 doesn't make 1, what, is math education in the ninja world that bad? But he dared not show his irritation again, who knew what other petty tricks Kakashi might pull. So he forced a delighted grin. That's great. That means we could start developing the new jutsu as soon as next month. The two began training according to plan. During this time, Kakashi discovered that Nan was also attending classes using shadow clones. This surprised him. He himself, a Jonin-level ninja, could barely manage 3 shadow clones while training. Yet Nan was casually juggling 5, and still looked like he had energy to spare. His astonishment deepened when Nan, unhappy with his training speed, split off a 6th clone. 6 clones. That was double what Kakashi could handle. Sure, Kakashi knew he had relatively low chakra reserves compared to most, but seeing a boy half his age with twice his chakra capacity still left him feeling emotionally devastated. If the gap is this wide now, what's it going to be like in the future? Once Nan reached adulthood, would his chakra reserves be 4 times, 8 times, or even 10 times larger than Kakashi's? The more Kakashi thought about it, the more hopeless it seemed. It's fine, he consoled himself internally, holding back tears. Power doesn't come from chakra alone. A ninja's strength isn't just about quantity. Little did he know that if Nan could hear his thoughts, he would have sneered 10 times. Please. If my adult chakra reserves aren't at least 100 times yours, I'll take your last name. Time passed quickly, and both of them progressed fast. Originally, Kakashi thought he'd have to wait for Nan to catch up. After all, his fire release proficiency was already ahead of Nan's lightning release. But to his surprise, Nan turned out to be even more of a genius than he'd expected. His training progress wasn't just fast because of the extra clone, it was clear that raw talent played a major role. Nan himself was aware of this, but Kakashi would never admit it. It's just because he used an extra clone. Yeah, that's it. It's definitely not because his talent surpasses mine. Before long, Nan's lightning release training caught up to, and even slightly surpassed, Kakashi's progress with fire release. The pressure was on, and Kakashi had no choice but to push himself harder. By the 3rd week, Nan completed his lightning release nature transformation, a full week ahead of schedule. Kakashi followed shortly after, successfully mastering fire release nature transformation as well. There was also an unexpected bonus. The shadow clone Nan assigned to teach Kakashi hadn't just been instructing, it had been training too. And oddly enough, while teaching, the clone seemed to gain a deeper understanding of fire release. When the experience was transferred back, Nan's fire release had suddenly leapt to Jonin-level proficiency. But to Nan, that was expected. He didn't even get excited about it. What truly thrilled him was this: now that he had completely mastered lightning release nature transformation, he could finally begin developing his own lightning-style taijutsu. After a quick discussion, he and Kakashi agreed there was no point in delaying any further. They would start developing the new technique immediately. Before Nan and Kakashi could begin developing their new jutsu, there was something important to clarify. Even though the techniques they aimed to create were similar, they were fundamentally different in nature. One was a ninjutsu, the other a taijutsu. What Nan needed was a lightning-infused taijutsu style. similar to the lightning release chakra mode passed down through the Raikage lineage. Nearly all shinobi knew how to enhance their speed and strength by coating their limbs with chakra. This was the foundation of taijutsu. However, lightning release chakra mode took this further. It involved replacing the regular chakra coating with chakra infused with the lightning nature. Lightning chakra had the unique property of stimulating the body, granting the user bursts of speed and explosive power. It worked on the same principle as elemental ninjutsu, being more powerful than neutral, non-elemental techniques. But while the theory sounded simple, putting it into practice was another story entirely. Standard taijutsu used non-elemental chakra, which was harmless to the user. Lightning release chakra, on the other hand, was volatile and difficult to control, especially when applied directly to the body. If mishandled, it could even prove fatal. To use lightning-infused taijutsu effectively, one needed not only a deep understanding of the lightning release nature and near-perfect control but also an incredibly strong body capable of withstanding prolonged exposure to high-voltage chakra. This is why so few shinobi ever developed or used such techniques. Only those with monstrous physical endurance, like the Raikage, could wield them without hesitation. Kakashi's Chidori, however, was a different matter. Although it also relied on lightning chakra to enhance the user's speed, Chidori was fundamentally a high-speed assassination jutsu. Its destructive power came from the massive amount of lightning chakra focused into the hand, turning it into a deadly piercing strike. The burst of speed was merely a means to an end, to ensure the technique connected with its target. Unlike Nan's envisioned taijutsu style, Chidori didn't require sustained speed or strength. It only needed to work once, just long enough to land the hit. This short burst of stimulation was far less harmful to the body. That's why Kakashi, despite lacking the Raikage's freakish physique, was able to develop Chidori on his own. Of course, his natural talent played a big role too. Which of the two techniques, Chidori or lightning chakra mode, was stronger was difficult to say. In the original story, the Raikage seemed more formidable than Kakashi, but that was largely due to his sheer physical prowess. His destructive power came from raw strength, enhanced by lightning. From a damage amplification perspective, Chidori was superior. But in terms of stability and sustainability, lightning chakra mode had the edge. One thing both techniques shared was their stimulation of the nervous system through lightning chakra. Even the Raikage couldn't afford to convert all his chakra into lightning release. When using lightning chakra mode, most of the chakra coating the body remained non-elemental, with only brief flashes of electricity dancing across the skin. It wasn't like Sasuke's Chidori stream, where the whole body crackled with lightning. If one infused too much lightning chakra directly into the body, completely replacing neutral chakra, it would result in instant death, even for someone as durable as the Raikage. Let alone for Nan and Kakashi. And so, the core goal of their collaboration was this, to determine the optimal ratio of lightning infused to neutral chakra for body enhancement. That is, how to maximize cellular activation and boost physical performance without damaging the body. Nan's role was crucial in this phase. Using his knowledge of medical ninjutsu and human anatomy, he would calculate the most effective way to apply lightning chakra for physical enhancement while minimizing the risk of injury. Kakashi, in turn, would draw on his extensive experience with lightning release to adjust and fine-tune the chakra transformation process based on Nan's data. Once they completed this foundational step, their paths would diverge. Kakashi's goal was to develop a high-output lightning release jutsu capable of gathering a massive amount of chakra into his palm to deliver a single, devastating strike. Nan's focus was on reducing the physical risks of long-term lightning release usage and syncing the chakra flow more seamlessly with taijutsu movements. At the same time, Nan would need to continue honing his chakra control to better handle the demands of prolonged lightning release activation. Once they finalized the development plan, Nan and Kakashi immediately began the first stage, testing the effects of lightning release on physical stimulation. Unlike their previous training sessions where Kakashi led the way, this time the experiment was driven by Nan's medical data. Of course, Nan intentionally fudged a few non-critical variables. As a result, Kakashi ended up suffering quite a bit more than necessary. When the lightning chakra surged through the wrong pathways and struck sensitive spots, Kakashi ended up rolling on the ground, screaming in pain. Watching Kakashi writhing in agony, Nan couldn't help but let out a few quiet, sinister chuckles. Then he composed himself and put on a concerned expression. "Oh dear, Kakashi, are you all right? It's all my fault, I must have mixed up some of the data by accident. I'm so sorry you had to go through that." Because back when Kakashi had been teaching Nan lightning release, he deliberately made things unpleasant for Nan, and had been extremely strict. Nan had never quite let that go. He hadn't wanted to lash out in the moment, but now that the opportunity presented itself, he was determined to get a little payback. Still lying sprawled on the ground, Kakashi saw Nan apologizing so sincerely and couldn't bring himself to be angry. Instead, he forced a wry smile and reassured him, "It's fine. Let's just keep at it." He slowly sat back up, and Nan stepped forward to use medical ninjutsu, treating the damage and fatigue caused by repeated lightning release stimulation. Seeing Nan so concerned, Kakashi never suspected that this was deliberate revenge for how harsh he'd been during Nan's lightning release training. He genuinely believed it was just an accidental miscalculation. Nan, meanwhile, felt quite pleased with himself. When he saw Kakashi not only fail to notice anything, but even show a trace of gratitude for the treatment, he thought smugly, "None of you ninja who didn't even go through 9 years of compulsory education can possibly imagine just how deep my tricks run." Not only had he secretly taken his revenge, but he'd even made Kakashi thank him for it. Poor Kakashi had no idea he'd been played like a fiddle. Of course, Nan wasn't truly malicious, he'd only tampered with a few non-critical parameters that wouldn't leave any lasting damage. Besides, Kakashi had definitely studied the basics before he set out to develop Chidori himself. If Nan altered anything too obvious, Kakashi might start to suspect something. And with Nan's excellent medical skills, there was no way Kakashi would suffer any serious harm. Most importantly, Nan couldn't afford to let Kakashi get knocked out completely. Without him, his own progress in developing new jutsu would be delayed. The development of their new techniques was proceeding in an orderly fashion, until a small interruption set them back slightly. That day, Nan and Kakashi were working as usual, experimenting and recalculating data, when suddenly a loud voice called out, "Come and fight me, Kakashi." Even without looking up, Nan immediately knew who it was. Who else but Might Guy, the man who had sworn to treat Kakashi as his lifelong rival. Sure enough, as soon as Kakashi heard that voice, his expression darkened into weary resignation. Guy had been clinging to him since childhood, always pestering him for a duel whenever he had the chance. At first, Kakashi had thought that beating him a few times would discourage him enough to go away. But to his dismay, Guy was absolutely indomitable. Kakashi had lost track of how many times he'd defeated him, but no matter what, Guy never stopped challenging him. He'd finally managed to dodge him for 2 whole months by going on missions, and then staying cooped up developing new techniques so Guy wouldn't have an opportunity to show up. Kakashi had hoped to enjoy a few more days of peace, but to his horror, Guy had tracked him down even here. With a screech of brakes and a cloud of dust, a young man in a sleeveless green bodysuit, sporting an absurd bowl-cut hairstyle and the thickest eyebrows imaginable, made his dramatic entrance, Might Guy himself. Guy thrust his thumb skyward at Kakashi. "At last, I've found you. Let's have a hot-blooded duel of youth." Beaming, he flashed a dazzling smile so bright that his gleaming teeth nearly blinded Nan and Kakashi. Strictly speaking, Nan's former self had actually known Might Guy for quite some time. Back then, Guy had always seen Kakashi as his rival, relentlessly pushing himself to catch up to the so-called genius. Lacking any real talent of his own, Guy forced himself through brutal daily training, placing tremendous strain on his body. He got injured so often from overtraining that he visited the hospital far more frequently than Kakashi ever did. That's how Nan's previous self got to know him, and as a result, he actually became more familiar with Guy than with Kakashi. If Kakashi had been a regular patient of his, then Guy was an extremely troublesome one. He'd end up hospitalized time and time again from pushing himself too hard. Many doctors, including Nan, had advised him repeatedly to ease up and prioritize his health. But Guy was stubborn. He ignored every warning and continued his grueling regimen without compromise. Eventually, Nan gave up trying to dissuade him. Instead, he found himself deeply moved by Guy's sheer tenacity and iron will. Now, with the memories of both lives, Nan knew very well that this same Might Guy would one day become the undisputed taijutsu king of the shinobi world, adored by fans everywhere as the Emperor Guy. And that success, it couldn't be separated from the unshakable perseverance and fearless resolve Guy showed even now. At this point in time, Guy had probably just been promoted to Chunin. Nan even remembered that it was sometime shortly after this that Guy's father, Might Due, sacrificed his life to protect the village, and passed on his spirit to his son. He wasn't sure if Due had already died in this timeline. If not, and if the opportunity arose, Nan actually wouldn't mind stepping in to save him. After all, Dewey's fate wasn't tightly bound to the main storyline, it wouldn't interfere with Nan's meta-knowledge or create any major disruptions. Both in his past life and now, Nan had always liked Guy as a character. Unfortunately, Guy didn't seem to even notice him at all, his eyes were locked completely on Kakashi, relentlessly hounding him for a duel. Kakashi, utterly exasperated by Guy's persistence, finally gave in and agreed to a challenge, but only if he got to choose the contest. "Let's see who can blink faster," Kakashi said casually. "How's that sound?" "What? I've been looking for you for 3 months, and this is the test you come up with? How boring." Guy was clearly disappointed. He had been yearning for a passionate, hot-blooded showdown, not a blinking contest. Now, it's not as pointless as it sounds," Kakashi countered, completely bullshitting. "Blinking faster actually tests the strength of the muscles around the eyes. And eye strength is very important for a ninja." Nan rolled his eyes. Kakashi was obviously just trying to brush Guy off with the dumbest idea possible. As far as Nan knew, there was zero correlation between eye muscle speed and visual acuity. Nobody with a working brain would fall for something like this. Except, perhaps, someone as earnest, and a bit simple, as Guy. "I see, so it's a battle of eye strength," Guy said, half convinced. Though I've never heard of blinking speed being tied to vision, he wasn't completely buying it, but he wasn't entirely dismissing it either. Even though Nan shared Guy's skepticism about Kakashi's nonsense, he also didn't want Guy wasting too much of their training time. Seeing that Guy was wavering, Nan decided to throw in some fuel to help Kakashi out. "Actually, blinking speed is related to ocular strength," Nan chimed in seriously. Only then did Guy finally notice the person standing beside Kakashi. It was someone he recognized, Nan. "Whoa! What a coincidence, Nan. What are you doing with Kakashi? You two know each other?" Nan briefly explained to Guy that he and Kakashi were working together to develop a new ninjutsu technique. "Ah, I see." Guy nodded. Then his expression turned serious again. "But Nan, do you really believe that blinking speed has anything to do with visual prowess?" "Of course I do," Nan replied smoothly. "You know our Uchiha clan is famous for our dojutsu bloodline, right?" As he spoke, Nan activated his Sharingan, an ordinary 3-tomo version, and said to Guy, "Usually, Uchiha train their eye techniques through intensive exercises. We use a method that's a lot like power blinking to strengthen our ocular abilities. Thanks to all my practice, I've already reached the 3-tomo level." Guy's eyes widened in awe. Suddenly, everything made sense. "So that's it," he exclaimed. In a flash, he fully believed Kakashi's ridiculous claim. "Come on, Kakashi. Let's start right away." And just like that, under Nan's amused gaze, the two of them launched into a blinking contest of epic proportions. As expected, the result was a complete and utter defeat for Guy. "Oh no //." Guy let out a dramatic wail. He couldn't accept the reality that his visual prowess was inferior to Kakashi's. But rather than give up, Guy doubled down. From now on, I'll practice blinking 5,000, no, 50,000 times a day. I'll outblink you. Watching Guy run off into the sunset, full of determination and passion, Nan couldn't help but feel a small pang of guilt. He's not actually going to do it, is he? 50,000 times, every day. But the guilt didn't last long. Anyway, this was all Kakashi's idea, Nan reassured himself. I was just going along with it, I was basically forced into it. He quickly convinced himself that the lie was a necessary evil in service of their training. That tiny sense of guilt soon vanished without a trace. Kakashi, for his part, was completely unbothered. He had pulled stunts like this on Guy countless times already. From that day forward, Guy began obsessively training his eye power every single day, blinking non-stop until his eyes turned red and swollen. When other people saw him, they asked in confusion what on earth he was doing. I'm training my vision, he would proudly declare. Naturally, everyone looked at him like he'd lost his mind. When they didn't believe him, he would argue back, insisting it was a method passed down personally by a genius from the Uchiha clan to awaken the Sharingan. No one took him seriously. They all assumed he had finally trained himself into madness. Eventually, this bizarre technique made its way to another certain Uchiha, Obito, who was struggling in vain to awaken his own Sharingan. And just like that, the urban legend of the blinking maniacs of Konoha began to spread. By the time the whole story came back to Nan, he suddenly realized, wait a second, maybe Kakashi wasn't entirely to blame after all. Maybe I might have been more responsible than I thought, but that was a matter for another time. With Guy now thoroughly occupied with his new, eye blink training regimen, Nan and Kakashi were finally able to focus on their own training in peace. Their progress skyrocketed. Not long after, they completed the first phase of their new jutsu development. They had successfully figured out how much lightning release chakra was needed to stimulate cellular activation. Now, both of them were able to use lightning release to temporarily enhance their speed. This breakthrough thrilled them, it confirmed their theoretical framework was solid. The technique was viable, and the final stage of development was now in sight. Just when they were preparing to push through and complete the technique in one final effort, news came that changed everything. Kakashi had received a mission assignment. He would be leaving the village soon. This meant their joint training project had to be put on hold. Nan understood. The village was still at war, and every battlefield needed capable shinobi. Kakashi had probably been given 2 months of leave just to work on this new jutsu. His departure now was inevitable. Still, it wasn't a major setback. They had already planned for the second phase of the technique to be developed independently anyway. They were just splitting up a bit earlier than expected. Both of them were confident they could finish the jutsu on their own. Kakashi even said he'd continue practicing during downtime on his mission, and he was determined to complete it before returning. Let's see who finishes it first, he challenged. No problem, Nan replied. Just don't be too embarrassed if I finish first and you have nothing to show for it. You might not even have the face to come back and look me in the eye. Kakashi said nothing, just stared at him silently. The more he got to know Nan, the more he realized the guy had a sharper tongue than he let on. It completely clashed with the reserved and gentle image Kakashi had once had of him. He was used to it now, mostly, and he knew Nan didn't mean anything malicious. Still, his words could sting sometimes. Nan, on the other hand, laughed heartily at Kakashi's deadpan expression. By the way, Kakashi, before you leave, how about a spar? Nan once again challenged Kakashi to a match. The two of them had already sparred a few times during their lightning release training, and the outcomes had always been fairly even, neither one able to dominate the other. Nan's fire release was roughly on par with Kakashi's lightning release. Nan had the Sharingan, while Kakashi had speed. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's right, Kakashi's fighting style had a striking resemblance to Shirsue's. However, at this point in time, Kakashi was even more formidable than Shirsue. He had far more combat experience, making fights with him significantly tougher than the ones Nan had with Shirsue. After reflecting on their previous duels, Nan realized something: he usually won thanks to his greater stamina, but he lost due to his lack of speed. He had to give Kakashi credit: no matter how the match unfolded, he could always force things into a dead-even draw. Now, after his preliminary training in lightning release body enhancement techniques, Nan was finally able to use it, though not yet perfectly, to boost his speed for short bursts. Having patched up his biggest weakness, he felt a surge of confidence. Beating Kakashi now? It should be easy. Hearing Nan's challenge, Kakashi was a little intrigued. During their first spar, he had thought victory would come easily. After all, Nan was only 6 years old. When Kakashi was 6, he had just become a Chunin. Even if Nan was equally gifted, at most he'd only be Chunin level now, while Kakashi himself was already approaching Jonin. But the moment Nan revealed his 3-tomo Sharingan, Kakashi's confidence had wavered. Kakashi knew all about the Sharingan. It was the Uchiha clan's Kekkai Genkai. His own teammate, the idiotic Obito Uchiha, dreamed of awakening that eye. And yet, at 12 years old, Obito hadn't even unlocked a single tomo. Meanwhile, Nan, barely half that age, had already mastered the Sharingan to its 3-tomo form. If Obito ever finds out, he might actually be so ashamed that he does something drastic, Kakashi thought, recalling Nan's teasing words. Kakashi realized then that beating Nan wouldn't be easy. Very few Uchiha reached 3-tomo, and those who did were often elite Jonin or high-ranking clan members. Even if Nan couldn't fully unleash the eye's power due to his youth, the fact that he could use part of it was already a serious threat. Sure enough, in battle, Kakashi discovered that Nan didn't just have the Sharingan, he also had double his chakra reserves, something he had already suspected. But what surprised him even more was Nan's actual combat experience. This wasn't the kind of textbook fighting you'd learn at the academy. Nan's moves came from real life and death struggles. Where had a 6-year-old learned that? Kakashi's plan had been to use his speed to gain an advantage, but against the Sharingan, it wasn't nearly as effective as he'd hoped. And once his chakra dipped and his performance started to drop, Nan would seize the moment with sharp, aggressive ninjutsu attacks. The most frustrating part? At first, Nan only used fire release techniques. But as the match dragged on, he actually started learning and copying Kakashi's lightning release jutsu using the Sharingan, and began using them against him. The battle quickly turned into a game of attrition. Would Kakashi's speed overwhelm Nan before his chakra ran out, or would Nan's superior stamina outlast Kakashi's bursts? Eventually, both realized neither could decisively defeat the other, and they stopped sparring. Kakashi, in particular, was reluctant to give Nan any more chances to copy his techniques. It was just too much of a disadvantage. Now, however, Nan had mastered the lightning release stimulation method, and he wanted to spar again. Clearly, he believed this technique had compensated for his slower speed and was confident he could finally win. Kakashi shot Nan a strange look. Did he forget that I know that technique too? Nan caught the meaning in Kakashi's eyes but wasn't concerned. He felt he had a better grasp of the lightning stimulation method than Kakashi did, and that's why he wanted a rematch. After all, the technique had been co-developed by the two of them, but their training paths had diverged. Nan used only a small amount of lightning chakra to reduce strain on his body and extend his endurance. Kakashi, on the other hand, had limited chakra to begin with, so he focused on explosive bursts, releasing large amounts of chakra all at once to achieve short-term speed spikes. Who had the stronger version of the lightning release stimulation method? Both Nan and Kakashi wanted to find out, so they faced off once more. Nan, aware of his chakra advantage, activated the lightning stimulation method right from the start. Kakashi, however, couldn't afford to do the same. Due to his limited chakra reserves, his combat style had always been built around carefully probing his opponent with taijutsu first, then waiting for the right moment to strike with ninjutsu when the odds were in his favor. His version of the lightning stimulation method was extremely chakra-intensive, focusing on short bursts of overwhelming speed and power. He needed the perfect opportunity to make it count. In the first clash, Nan immediately gained the upper hand. Aside from speed, he had never lagged behind Kakashi in any category, and now, with speed no longer an issue, he had surpassed him. Combined with the Sharingan's predictive ability, Nan's speed was now significantly faster than Kakashi's. And yet Kakashi still held his ground, thanks to that uncanny ability of his, to force a deadlock, no matter how bad the matchup looked. But this wasn't luck. It was Kakashi's tactical brilliance in action. He had a natural talent for playing to his strengths and minimizing his weaknesses, allowing him to maximize the effectiveness of his limited resources. Though Nan had increased speed and power thanks to the lightning method, his close-quarters combat skills hadn't improved much. Kakashi exploited this flaw to barely keep up with Nan's relentless offense. But the longer the battle dragged on, the more Kakashi knew, he wouldn't be able to last. Realizing he couldn't win in a prolonged fight, Kakashi began searching for an opening to launch a decisive surprise attack using his lightning release. But Nan, with his highly perceptive Sharingan, was incredibly hard to fool. Kakashi tried baiting him multiple times, deliberately exposing openings in hopes of drawing an attack, then counterattacking. But Nan saw through every trap and avoided them all, rendering Kakashi's attempts useless. That said, Nan wasn't in great shape either. He desperately wanted to end the fight quickly, but Kakashi was proving annoyingly difficult to put down. Without a technique powerful enough to secure a one-hit victory, the battle dragged on longer than Nan had hoped. Nan was starting to feel anxious. After all, his lightning stimulation method was still incomplete. Prolonged use put heavy strain on his body. To reduce the side effects, he was forced to gradually scale back the use of lightning-style chakra transformations. This lowered the negative impact on his body, but it also made his acceleration less effective. Kakashi noticed the drop in Nan's performance. This was his chance. Secretly forming hand seals, he unleashed a half-completed version of Chidori. Crackling lightning burst from his hand and body, and in an instant, his speed surged explosively as he lunged at Nan. Nan saw it coming with his Sharingan, but while his eyes tracked the movement clearly, his body simply couldn't keep up. Kakashi was just too fast in that moment. Am I really going to lose here? Nan wasn't ready to accept that. Until now, he had only used the copy will-I portion of his Sharingan in battles against Kakashi. He had never once used the illusion-casting powers of the eye. Now, with his body unable to react, he had only one option left, Genjutsu. In that critical instant, Nan used his Sharingan's illusion ability, for the first time ever on another person. The only real counter to a Sharingan Genjutsu is to avoid making eye contact with the user. But Kakashi, fully focused on Nan, never expected a Genjutsu attack at that moment. He failed to react in time, and just like that, he was caught. Kakashi's body froze in place. The lightning dancing along his hand and body fizzled out. Nan vs Kakashi, Nan wins. After releasing the Genjutsu, Nan looked over and saw Kakashi staring at him with a deep, brooding gaze. Nan felt a little awkward. He knew he'd basically cheated to win. If he hadn't used Genjutsu at the last second, he probably would have lost. Kakashi, for his part, was quietly jealous. As a ninja, he knew he was superior in overall skill and experience. But unlike Nan, he was just an ordinary shinobi, he didn't possess a special Kekkei Genkai. Recalling how easily Nan had copied his lightning release techniques with the Sharingan, Kakashi couldn't help but think, if only I had a Sharingan too. I'd copy thousands of jutsus non-stop. After parting ways with Kakashi, Nan immediately threw himself into perfecting his own ninja taijutsu technique. Though he had been half joking with Kakashi, the bold words he'd said weren't so easy to take back. If Kakashi returned and his technique was still unfinished, the one who'd be left red-faced and ashamed would be Nan himself. Over the past 4 months of training, Nan had made significant progress in many areas. Most notably, his fire release ninjutsu had reached Jonin-level proficiency around the same time he mastered lightning release chakra nature transformation. And just a month ago, while working on his lightning techniques, he'd taken the time to reinforce his fire techniques, which were now much more refined than before. His mastery over EMS release illusions had also seen tremendous improvement. What was once his weakest area, genjutsu, had now become one of his greatest strengths. Of course, much of this was thanks to his incredibly strong spiritual energy and ocular power. With the aid of his fully matured three-tomo Sharingan, his genjutsu was now likely superior to that of even most genjutsu specialist jonin. Beneath the level of Kage, there were likely few who could match him. It might sound exaggerated, but when you consider that his phantom clone technique was derived from the Mangekyō Sharingan, it no longer seemed so unbelievable. The only area where his progress remained sluggish was taijutsu. Due to his young age, and despite the extra physical energy granted to him through chakra infusion, his body simply couldn't keep up. His current level of taijutsu was barely equivalent to that of a high-ranking genin. In truth, having that kind of physical prowess at his age already qualified him as a rare prodigy. But for Nan, it wasn't enough. His ninjutsu and genjutsu were jonin tier. His actual overall combat strength was comparable to a Kage-level shinobi. And then you had his taijutsu, genin level. It was laughable. Practically non-existent. If Nan had more time or patience, with his chakra-enhanced body, he could very well train his taijutsu to jonin level by the time he turned 10. But he didn't want to wait. Who knew how strong he'd need to be 4 years from now? Low taijutsu ability could easily become a massive liability down the line. Even now, his lack of taijutsu proficiency had already become a major obstacle in the development of his new technique. He was currently stuck at the point of designing an optimal chakra circulation route. Taijutsu doesn't just rely on physical strength, it also requires precise chakra control to maximize performance. The same goes for his intended ninja taijutsu hybrid technique. In Nan's design, the ninja part involved channeling lightning release chakra to amplify physical strength and speed, compensating for his underdeveloped physique due to age. That part, thanks to his work with Kakashi, was already more or less complete. All that remained was refinement and testing to make it battle-ready. But the taijutsu half of the technique wasn't just about brute strength. He needed to skillfully use that power and, more importantly, calculate the most efficient chakra pathways based on actual taijutsu movement patterns, in order to maximize the lightning release amplification effect. And here was the problem, Nan had almost no real experience in taijutsu. And that had left him completely stuck. How had he only thought about the lightning release aspect before, and not considered the taijutsu problem? Taijutsu specialists in Konoha were even rarer than lightning release users. Finding someone both skilled enough and willing to help was no easy task. What Nan needed wasn't just someone good at taijutsu. Some shinobi excelled simply because of superior physical strength or chakra levels. That wouldn't do. He needed someone with real technique, someone who could teach him, preferably in a short amount of time. He thought over the people he knew. No one in his clan specialized in taijutsu. And beyond his family, he didn't really have many connections. There was only one person he could think of, Might Guy, whom he'd met not long ago. But Guy was just a newly promoted chunin at this stage, not yet the legendary taijutsu master he would one day become. Nan seriously doubted whether the current Guy could meet his needs. Still, he had no better options. So he went looking for him. Fortunately, finding Guy was much easier than finding Kakashi. As long as he was in the village, all you had to do was visit a few training grounds, sooner or later, you'd spot him. As luck would have it, Guy had just returned from a mission and was back in Konoha. It didn't take long before Nan found him. When he saw Guy's red, swollen eyes, Nan couldn't help but twitch at the corner of his mouth. Don't tell me, he still believes Kakashi's nonsense and is training his eyesight every day. Unable to help himself, Nan asked, Guy, judging by how you look. Have you been doing daily eye training exercises? Guy, who was drenched in sweat from his intense training, immediately lit up when he saw Nan. He hadn't slacked off for a single day, he'd been blinking 50,000 times a day, desperately trying to improve his eyesight. Yet after all that time, he hadn't felt the slightest improvement. But this was, after all, the training method used by two geniuses, Kakashi and Nan, so he had believed in it wholeheartedly. If he hadn't improved, he figured it had to be his fault for not doing it right. Now that Nan was here, he could finally ask what he'd been doing wrong. After hearing Guy's explanation, Nan genuinely worried that this lunatic would eventually go blind, so he quickly tried to dissuade him. Guy, if you haven't made any progress after all this time, maybe it's because this kind of training just doesn't suit you. I think it's best to give it up. Guy looked a bit disheartened after hearing that. So it wasn't that he'd done it wrong, it was that he didn't have the talent for training his vision. That meant the gap between him and geniuses like Kakashi and Nan had widened even more. Nan saw Guy's disappointed expression and guessed what he must be thinking. Not wanting to crush his spirit, he quickly added, but that doesn't mean you should give up. There's more than one way to train your perception. Plenty of top shinobi never used this method. I believe you'll find the way that suits you best. You're right, Nan. Guy said, brimming with energy again. Even if my vision isn't good, I can make up for it by working twice as hard in other areas. I won't lose to anyone. Nan looked at the sheer confidence on Guy's face and thought to himself, you're going to train even harder. Are you trying to kill yourself with effort? But this was just who Guy was. Seeing him bounce back so quickly, Nan felt relieved. Thanks for the encouragement, Nan. By the way, did you come find me for something? Now that the moment had come, Nan got to the point, I want to train in taijutsu with you. Is that okay, Guy? Oh. You want to learn taijutsu from me? Guy asked, surprised. But you're a ninjutsu specialist, aren't you? I saw you and Kakashi working on some new technique not too long ago. And besides, he added, you're from the Uchiha clan. Surely there are stronger taijutsu users in your clan than me. Wouldn't they be better teachers? Nan sighed. Don't even mention it. He had tried asking around in the clan, but most Uchiha relied too heavily on the Sharingan. With visual prediction, they didn't need to grind out pure taijutsu. Techniques that required prolonged physical conditioning. Few in the clan had ever trained them seriously. They were of little use to Nan. That's why he'd come to Guy. Honestly, he wasn't that hopeful, but it was worth a try. Desperate times called for desperate measures. He explained his dilemma to Guy, how he was developing a ninja taijutsu hybrid technique, and why he urgently needed to improve his taijutsu. I see. Guy said with a big grin. I didn't really understand most of what you just said, but if I can help a friend, I'd be happy to. Guy agreed to train with Nan without hesitation. But you better be ready, Nan, Guy warned. My training is intense. If you can't keep up, there's nothing I can do. Nan quickly assured him that he was mentally prepared and willing to endure anything. For the sake of completing his new technique, he was ready to give it his all, even if it meant pushing his body to the limit. And so, the two made their pact and began training together right away. But after just half a day of training, Nan was already starting to regret it. He had completely underestimated the madness of Guy's training regimen. Nan had believed he could endure any hardship to improve his taijutsu quickly. After all, he'd pushed himself to the brink in both ninjutsu and genjutsu to reach jonin-level mastery. How hard could taijutsu really be? The answer. Much harder than he ever imagined. Compared to the agony of taijutsu training, ninjutsu and genjutsu were a walk in the park. After training with Guy for a while, Nan finally understood why, among all the ordinary ninja who managed to fight those late-game god-tier monsters, only someone as seemingly talentless as Guy could do it. It was because Guy truly went all out. He trained like a madman, with absolutely no restraint. He punched until his fists literally couldn't move, kicked until his legs refused to lift, and ran until he collapsed. He wouldn't stop unless he passed out, and even more terrifyingly, once he had actually passed out from exhaustion, yet his body kept moving, continuing the training purely on instinct. That kind of willpower was insane. Maybe only someone with that level of resolve could rise from a mediocre background and achieve power comparable to a god. For a taijutsu ninja, strength came not just from muscles, but from how much chakra they could channel through their bodies. And Guy's training had no technical finesse. There was no secret technique to improve his strength, just pure, relentless, brutal repetition. He simply kept breaking his limits, forcing his body to evolve and adapt to ever-increasing chakra loads. Nan, with his skinny arms and legs, had a tough time enduring that kind of torment. This wasn't the kind of training he needed, but he had no other option for now. So he grit his teeth and pushed himself to follow Guy's insane pace as best he could. Fortunately, he discovered that this break-through-the-limit style of training helped him absorb that excess energy in his body much faster. Every time he reached exhaustion, that mysterious energy would help him recover rapidly, and the more he pushed himself, the more his physical stats improved afterward. On top of that, Nan could use medical ninjutsu via his clones at home to heal, allowing him to barely keep up. But after a while, he realized this approach was unsustainable. Yes, it was more effective than his own training, but still far from efficient. He was hitting his limits faster, taking longer to recover, and his gains were shrinking. He understood, he was overdrafting his body. He needed to stop this extreme training before it caused lasting damage. He was only 6 years old. Subjecting his developing body to this kind of stress could seriously impair his growth and future health. Even though Nan had techniques like formless reincarnation to recover from injuries, that couldn't fix developmental issues. If he stunted his growth and didn't grow tall, that would be a huge problem. Sacrificing the future for temporary strength just wasn't worth it. He also recalled how, among Guy's future 3 students, only Lee could keep up with this kind of training. Human potential does have limits. Willpower alone can't defy the laws of nature. Hard work doesn't always equal results. Those who succeed using methods like this must possess some rare, hidden talent, just like Guy once said to Lee, a genius of hard work. But Nan wasn't that kind of genius. So this path wasn't for him. The next day, he told Guy honestly and asked if he knew any taijutsu ninja with more refined techniques. Guy understood, Nan's body wasn't built for his style of training. But he genuinely didn't know any skilled taijutsu specialists to refer him to. Most taijutsu-focused ninja are seen as useless. We're a bunch of muscle-headed idiots, like me, good for nothing except brute effort, Guy said with a sigh. Then he added, there was one taijutsu master I knew, Master Chen. But he's dead now. If he were still alive, maybe he could have helped you. Nan froze. Master Chen. Chen. Right. How could I forget about him? He suddenly remembered, yes, in the original storyline, there was such a person. A true taijutsu master, famous not only in Konoha, but even known across the other villages. Like Guy, he was a pure taijutsu user, and he even had a disciple who also specialized solely in taijutsu. Chen had poured his heart into training that student into a proper ninja. But on the battlefield, the student was killed because he couldn't use ninjutsu, his greatest weakness exposed. Heartbroken, Chen gave up on the world. He even built his own grave and declared himself dead, retiring into seclusion and cutting ties with everyone. The villagers assumed he really had died. It wasn't until years later, during the Fourth Great Ninja War, that he reappeared, resurrected by Kabuto's Edo Tensei technique. But Nan knew the truth. Chen wasn't dead, not yet. And he'd still be alive by the time the main plot began. Chen could generate tornadoes with nothing but his powerful kicks. His strength was easily on par with Guy after opening 6 gates. There was no doubt, he was a Kage-level taijutsu ninja. This man was a true expert. Even the adult guy from the original series couldn't defeat him. Probably no one in the world understood taijutsu better than Chen. If Nan could receive his guidance, he could surely complete the development of his hybrid nin taijutsu. But how could he get Chen to help him? That was the tricky part. Nan needed to think it through carefully. So he asked Guy, "Do you happen to know where Master Chen used to live?" Guy blinked. "I do, but... why are you asking?" Nan had already come up with a plan. "Think about it, Guy. A man as powerful as Master Chen, with no successor, he wouldn't want his techniques to vanish forever, right? Maybe. Just maybe. He left behind a scroll. A martial arts manual recording everything he knew." Guy looked confused. "A martial arts manual? What's that?" Nan kept going. "You know, in novels there are always stories like this. A dumb kid accidentally finds a scroll left by a powerful master and learns all his secret techniques, becoming a legendary warrior." Guy's eyes lit up. Nan was reeling him in. Nan leaned closer. "What if we go to Master Chen's old home and find his secret scroll? We could learn his skills and carry on his legacy." Guy's jaw dropped. "You mean we might be able to learn his techniques too?" He'd never read a novel in his life, but Nan's words made perfect sense to him. He'd once seen Master Chen from afar, unleashing his signature move Leaf Dragon God. That majestic display had left a deep impression on him. Now, the mere idea of inheriting his teacher's legacy had Guy trembling with excitement. Nan could see his plan was working. Guy looked like he was already imagining himself performing the Leaf Dragon God move. Of course, Nan knew the real deal, Chen wasn't dead at all. But he couldn't say that out loud. So this whole secret scroll thing was just a made-up excuse to get Guy interested enough to help him go find Chen. In the end, whether or not they could convince Chen to help, it would all depend on Guy's role in this. Sure enough, without Nan even needing to ask, Guy enthusiastically volunteered to take him to Master Chen's old home to search for the legendary martial arts manual. Nan walked slowly, but Guy was so fired up he kept urging him to hurry. Nan just shook his head and chuckled. Soon, the two of them arrived at the mountain where Chen had gone into seclusion. Nan deliberately had Guy take him to the grave Chen had built for himself. Guy was puzzled. "Aren't we looking for the manual? Why are we stopping at his grave?" Nan explained, "It's respectful. If we want to learn his techniques, the least we can do is greet him properly first." Guy nodded approvingly. "You're thoughtful as always." But Nan's real reason for coming here was to accidentally run into Chen. He even timed their visit for lunch, when Chen would usually show up. Right on cue, as they approached the grave, they saw a young man kneeling and placing 3 rice balls as offerings. Turns out, this was Chen's son. He firmly believed his father was still alive, because every day, the rice balls he left at the grave would mysteriously disappear by the next morning. Nan knew the truth, but he said to Guy, "How could a dead man eat rice balls? Must have been a thief." Guy grew furious. A thief? Even daring to steal food meant for Master Chen's spirit? That's unforgivable. I'd beat them half to death. And just as lunchtime hit, right on schedule, Chen arrived at his own grave to pick up the rice balls. Nan remembered someone named Chen from the original story, but the man had only appeared in a single episode and wasn't important to the plot, so he couldn't recall what he looked like at all. Still, based on the time and location, there was no doubt this had to be Chen. He just hadn't expected him to be such a strange-looking old man. Not only was he short and scrawny, but he also sported a pair of long, catfish-like whiskers and wore sunglasses that looked entirely unnecessary. The whole appearance was just odd. He looked nothing like the powerful taijutsu master Nan had imagined. But appearances could be deceiving. As Nan stared at the man, memories from the original series started surfacing. The more he looked, the more certain he became, this was indeed the Chen. Standing beside him, Guy looked like he had just seen a ghost. Nan raised an eyebrow. Guy, do you know Chen? He couldn't recall any mention in the original story of Guy knowing Chen personally, but judging by his reaction, it seemed he did. That wouldn't do. It didn't fit Nan's plans at all. Thinking quickly, he decided to redirect the situation. Nan suddenly made a dramatic expression. With a trembling hand, he pointed at Chen and shouted in righteous indignation, You're the one who's been stealing the offerings every day. I can't believe you had the audacity to use the transformation jutsu to impersonate the late Master Chen and deceive his family. I've never seen someone so shameless. His voice was full of conviction, his tone powerful, and his gestures exaggerated, an Oscar-worthy performance that completely fooled Guy. Guy, who had been stunned speechless by seeing his late idol apparently alive and well, was now filled with righteous fury. So that's it. He thought. A thief using the transformation jutsu to sully Master Chen's name. Unforgivable. Meanwhile, Chen, either unaware or simply unconcerned, had already wandered off to grab some rice balls. Seeing this only added fuel to Guy's fire. A thief acting so arrogantly, without another word, he launched into action. Konoha Whirlwind. Guy roared, unleashing one of his signature moves. If the thief was a shinobi capable of transformation, then there was no need to hold back. What the hell? Chen had no idea who this brat was or why he was suddenly attacking him. But Chen wasn't just any old man, he was known as Konoha's strongest taijutsu user. Even when caught off guard, he reacted swiftly. With a sudden burst of movement, he countered with the same move, Konoha Whirlwind, meeting Guy head-on. Guy was stunned. He's using my move. Was this man also a taijutsu specialist? That only made things worse. For a taijutsu user to disgrace the master they all admired, unforgivable, fueled by anger, Guy pushed himself harder, and his kicks became even more intense. But no matter how fierce his attacks, the man in front of him deflected each one effortlessly, reading his movements with ease. Of course. Konoha Whirlwind was Chen's original technique. He knew all its weaknesses inside and out. Sure enough, after a few more exchanges, Chen caught an opening in Guy's stance and sent him flying with a perfectly timed counter. Then, he followed up with a technique Guy didn't know, Konoha Rising Wind, spinning mid-air and launching a fierce kick that sent Guy tumbling across the ground, leaving a long groove in the dirt. Clutching his aching body, Guy muttered in awe, so strong, but something didn't sit right. How could someone this powerful be a petty thief? Before he could finish that thought, Nan chimed in again, fanning the flames. Guy, look! He's about to eat Master Chen's rice ball. Guy looked up, sure enough, the man had picked up a rice ball and was just about to take a bite. No way! Guy couldn't stand by and let someone desecrate a tribute to his idol. He had no more room for doubt. He had to act, now. Heh! Fourth gate, Gate of Pain, open. With a low growl, Guy unleashed the fourth gate of the 8 inner gates, surging forward with terrifying speed. Chen hadn't expected such a sudden boost in speed. He nearly got hit. Still, his experience kicked in at the last moment, allowing him to narrowly dodge. But the dodge came with a cost. Reacting purely on instinct, he failed to notice the rice ball in his hand slipping from his fingers and smashing to the ground. Arg! Chen let out a roar of rage as he stared at the shattered remains of the rice ball. You destroyed the only joy I had left in life. Unforgivable. Witness the wrath of the dragon god of Leaf. His body began spinning rapidly, creating a vortex of air around him like a miniature tornado. Guy, seeing this display of terrifying power, finally realized something was very wrong. Wait. I think I might have made a mistake. This guy really might be the real Chen-sensei. Wait, hold on. Guy panicked, scrambling to stop the coming storm. This is all a big misunderstanding. But by now, Chen had already lost all reason. There was no way he could hear Guy's explanation. And with the dragon god of Leaf fully unleashed, standing at the eye of his own tornado-like technique, Chen couldn't hear a thing Guy said even if he wanted to. The swirling vortex roared toward Guy like a colossal dragon. Under normal circumstances, even if Guy couldn't dodge in time, he would at least have the strength to counter it. After all, he was still under the effects of the 8 gates release technique. But the sheer pressure radiating from the dragon god overwhelmed him. For the first time in his life, Guy froze in fear. The blast hit him square on. He was launched nearly 20 meters through the air before crashing to the ground, unconscious. Fortunately, Chen had held back. If he had used the same force he would on an enemy, Guy wouldn't have just passed out, he'd have been torn to shreds on the spot. Unlike the battered Guy, Nan, who had been prepared for all of this, was completely unharmed. He had hidden far away, watching the entire battle unfold from a safe distance. Because, in truth, everything had gone exactly according to Nan's plan. Nan didn't know Chen personally, nor was he confident he could persuade the legendary taijutsu master to train him. But then he remembered the original story, how Li used to visit Chen's grave to pay his respects, and what followed afterward. From there, an idea struck him. If he couldn't convince Chen to teach him directly, why not steal the knowledge instead? His entire scheme had been built to provoke a fight between Guy and Chen, giving him the perfect opportunity to observe from up close. He hoped to uncover the secrets behind Chen-sensei's legendary taijutsu techniques. Of course, for the average person, hoping to learn advanced taijutsu just by watching a battle from the sidelines would be pure fantasy. But Nan wasn't average, he possessed the Sharingan. And not just any Sharingan, but an Eternal Mangekyō Sharingan with extraordinary visual prowess. Even in its base form with 3 tomo, his Sharingan was far more powerful than most. The greatest strength of the Sharingan, after all, was copying techniques. Sasuke had once copied Li's taijutsu with just a standard Sharingan. There was no reason Nan couldn't do the same, or better. Even if Chen's taijutsu was far more refined and difficult to grasp, Nan believed that with his eyes, he could at least decode part of it. The moment Guy and Chen first clashed, Nan had activated his Sharingan and started analyzing every movement. He witnessed the entire fight from start to finish, dissecting it frame by frame. Unfortunately, the fight ended too quickly. The gap in power between the two was simply too wide. Nan hadn't been able to observe as much as he wanted. Still, Guy's use of the 8 gates had pushed Chen into revealing his trump card, the dragon god of Konoha. That alone made it all worth it. Techniques like Konoha Whirlwind and Konoha Rising Wind, Nan had studied them thoroughly. He was confident that with a bit of lightning release chakra to supplement his physical strength, he could replicate them himself. It was a bit disappointing, though. Just like how complex ninjutsu was difficult to replicate without deep understanding, the dragon god technique had proven too intricate for Nan to fully decipher in such a short time. Still, the idea of giving up never even crossed his mind. By the time Guy dragged himself back to his feet, Chen was already gone. His entire body felt like it had been shattered, every muscle screaming in pain, but even so, Guy could only mutter in awe. The dragon god of Leaf, absolutely incredible. Despite his battered body, there was a strange, burning light in his eyes. Nan noticed it and smiled. He knew that someone as obsessed with taijutsu as Guy would never give up after witnessing such overwhelming power. After seeing the might of the dragon god, Guy would do whatever it took to make Chen teach him that technique. Just as Nan had planned. In the original story, it was after witnessing Chen's dragon god of Leaf that Rock Lee desperately pleaded for Chen to teach him the technique. Guy and Lee are practically mirror images of each other, neither capable of using ninjutsu or genjutsu. In a world where ninjutsu is considered everything, they were both once labeled useless. But they made taijutsu their sole pursuit, training relentlessly day after day for even the tiniest breakthrough, just to prove that pure taijutsu alone can make one a great shinobi. Now, Guy stands on the brink of becoming that very kind of hero, someone who has earned the world's respect through nothing but taijutsu. How could he give up so easily now? Nan understood the kind of man Guy was, the type who would chase his dream even if it meant dying for it. So he knew Guy would stop at nothing to try and get Chen to pass on his secret technique. But Chen wasn't the type to easily accept disciples either. A confrontation between the two was inevitable, and there would be a second, a third, and more. And Nan? He could observe from the sidelines with his Sharingan, gradually learning all the secrets behind Chen's taijutsu. To some, it might seem like Nan was simply using Guy. But in truth, it was a win-win. Nan was giving Guy the rare chance to connect with a true master of taijutsu. Even if, in the end, Chen still refused to teach Guy, Nan could learn the technique first and pass it on to him later. As for Chen, it wasn't a loss for him either. His nearly lost legacy would finally have successors, it wouldn't die with him. No one came out of this empty-handed. Just as Nan had predicted, the next day Guy dragged him back to Chen's grave, and once again, they found Chen there. Guy, still feeling guilty about yesterday's misunderstanding, gave a sincere apology. He had thought Chen, long presumed dead, was an impostor, and had acted disrespectfully out of ignorance. Then, bowing deeply, Guy made a heartfelt plea, "Please, pass down your ultimate technique, the Dragon God of Leaf, to me." But Chen had long since given up on taking another disciple after his only one died. At Guy's request, he waved it off and turned to leave without a word. Panicking, Guy called out again, "Please, Master Chen. I'm no good at ninjutsu or genjutsu, taijutsu is all I have, even so, I want to prove that with everything I've got, if I train hard enough, I can become a ninja worthy of respect." Chen's steps halted. Those words, he had heard them before. He turned and asked flatly, "You still want to be a ninja despite not knowing ninjutsu?" "Yes, Master Chen." Guy replied with unwavering conviction. "As the strongest taijutsu ninja, I know you of all people would understand my dream. Please, believe in me." Guy's voice rang with firm resolve. But to his surprise, Chen suddenly erupted in fury, "You fool! How can you call yourself a ninja if you can't even use ninjutsu? I'll beat some sense into you right now, show you just how stupid that dream of yours really is." For a brief moment, Guy's figure overlapped with that of Chen's late student, the only one he ever took in, who had once said the exact same thing. Moved by those words, Chen had accepted him, only for it to end in tragedy. He blamed himself for his disciple's death. Overcome by emotion, he lashed out, projecting all his guilt and pain onto Guy. He wasn't trying to test him, he was trying to shatter his dream. Guy hadn't expected Chen to suddenly attack. But unlike Li in the original story, this guy had been through real battlefields, baptized in blood, he wasn't so easily overwhelmed. He fought back immediately. Unfortunately, Chen was simply too strong, and fighting in anger, he held nothing back. Within moments, Guy was overwhelmed and sent crashing to the ground. Nan, watching from the side, had originally been thrilled. The moment they started fighting, he'd activated his Sharingan, hoping to steal a few techniques. But this time, Guy lost even faster than before, collapsing before Nan could analyze anything. Unlike last time, when Chen had held back at first, this time he went all in, his aim being to crush Guy's will. Standing over him, Chen coldly said, "You, who can't even use ninjutsu, with skills like that, give up. You'll never be a real ninja." "Why?" Guy looked up, confused and hurt. Why would someone he admired so deeply say something so heartless? But Chen gave no further explanation. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Guy could only watch helplessly as Master Chen walked away once more. In the days that followed, Guy returned to Chen's grave every single day, rain or shine, he would be there, waiting patiently. Each time, Chen would ignore him completely, taking only his rice ball before silently leaving. From the sidelines, Nan grew increasingly frustrated. "Come on, you two. Just fight already. If you don't, how am I supposed to copy anything?" That's when Nan realized a flaw in his plan. both Guy and Chen had more patience than he expected. Guy kept asking to be taught and was rejected again and again, yet refused to give up. Chen, despite being bothered daily, didn't try to drive him away. He simply let things be. But this stalemate couldn't go on. Nan knew that if he didn't take action soon, Guy might get called away on a mission, and who knew when he'd return. That would delay Nan's progress, and if that happened, he might lose to Kakashi. That was unacceptable. He had to add fuel to the fire. So he went to Guy and said, "Since Master Chen clearly has no intention of teaching you, there's no point forcing him. But that doesn't mean you can't learn it on your own. Just like last time, use your full power to push him into using his ultimate technique. Watch it enough times, and maybe you'll figure it out yourself." Sure enough, Guy was convinced. He decided to try Nan's approach the very next day. When Chen arrived once again at his grave, he wasn't surprised to see that stubborn kid still waiting. But this time, something was different. Guy didn't bow. He didn't beg. Instead, he stepped forward and took a fighting stance, shouting with fierce determination, "Master Chen. I won't ask you to teach me the Dragon God of Leaf anymore. I'll risk my life and use everything I have to force it out of you. I will uncover its secrets with my own strength." Without another word, Guy launched the first strike. Chen was furious. "This cocky brat, fine, you want to see the Dragon God of Leaf, I'll show it to you," with full force. Once again, he unleashed the Dragon God of Leaf, the roaring dragon-shaped vortex tearing through the earth as wind and stone scattered in all directions. Guy responded by opening the gate of pain, bracing himself against the ferocious attack. This time, he was prepared. Instead of being instantly overwhelmed like before, he managed to hold his own, exchanging blows with Chen in a fast-paced taijutsu battle. But Guy soon realized the Dragon God of Leaf wasn't just a powerful offensive technique, it also had exceptional defensive capabilities. Chen's entire body was enveloped in a spiraling, tornado-like aura that deflected nearly every strike. The airflow around him was impenetrable. Guy couldn't break through. And the strain of maintaining the inner gates was starting to wear him down. Still, he wasn't discouraged this time. He stayed calm, kept observing. And he noticed something, a pattern. This Dragon God of Leaf, it's just like a tornado, but what's a tornado's weakness again? Before he could finish the thought, his strength gave out. The energy from the 8 gates faded, and Guy lost the speed needed to keep up. In the next moment, he was caught again by the full force of the Dragon God of Leaf and blasted backward, crashing to the ground, unconscious. This time, their fight had lasted much longer, which allowed Nan to observe and analyze even more of Chen's taijutsu techniques. If they went one more round like this, Nan believed he might be able to fully decipher the Dragon God of Leaf. Guy hadn't been able to find the technique's weakness. But Nan, watching through the Sharingan, had seen it clearly. The Dragon God of Leaf's weak point is the Eye of the Storm, that calm center where the airflow is thinnest and most vulnerable. If I told Guy this and he challenged Chen again, could he finally break through? As Chen looked down at the fallen Guy, a hint of hesitation flickered in his heart. Though he seemed cold, part of him felt pity. But he still held firm to his belief, a ninja who can't use ninjutsu shouldn't be a ninja at all. He couldn't see through the Dragon God of Leaf. Maybe now he'll finally give up. He won't come back tomorrow. With a sigh, Chen turned and walked away. Chen had thought Guy wouldn't return. But how could someone like Guy give up so easily, especially after Nan had secretly told him about the Dragon God of Leaf's weakness? Guy now felt even more confident about challenging the legendary taijutsu master again. So, once more, Guy came knocking. "Chen-sensei. I've returned. Please use the Dragon God of Leaf one more time. This time, I swear, I'll uncover its secret." Chen looked at him, helpless and a bit exasperated. "Why are you so obsessed with the Dragon God technique?" Guy responded seriously, "At this point, it's no longer just about the Dragon God. I simply can't accept what you said to me last time. Chen had once told Guy that a person who couldn't use ninjutsu didn't deserve to be a ninja. It had been harsh, even cruel, but in his eyes, it was for Guy's own good. His reasoning was rooted in trauma. Guy reminded him far too much of his former student, another taijutsu-only ninja who died tragically, overwhelmed by enemy ninjutsu. Every time saw Guy, it brought those painful memories back. He didn't want to watch another youth throw his life away in the same way. Guy didn't know the story behind Chen's words, but he knew one thing: a ninja's worth isn't determined by whether they can use ninjutsu. A ninja's greatest value lies in their willingness to give everything to protect what they hold dear, even their lives. He looked at Chen straight in the eye and declared, "That's why, to me, what matters most now is gaining your recognition, your approval of my dream. Even if I can only use taijutsu, I believe that the things I treasure can still give me great strength." Chen was stunned. He hadn't expected Guy to say something like that. For the first time, he was moved. He wanted to see for himself, could Guy really prove those words? "Very well," said solemnly. "I'll use the Dragon God technique one last time. Let's see if your precious dream can truly awaken a power strong enough to break it." And with that, the Dragon God of Leaf was unleashed once more. Only this time, it was different. This time, Chen didn't hold back. This was his full strength. If Guy could defeat it, then would accept that he was wrong. But if not, he would utterly crush Guy, and everything he stood for. For Nan, this was a golden opportunity. He had already analyzed most of S' previous movements. Now, with going all out, he had a chance to learn even more. Meanwhile, Guy could instantly feel the difference. In their last encounter, when he'd opened the fourth gate, he had at least managed to keep up with S' movements, barely. But now, no matter how hard he tried, he was being pushed back non-stop under a storm of fierce, relentless attacks. Even knowing the Dragon God's weakness didn't help. He simply wasn't fast enough to reach the eye of the storm, the technique's vulnerable point. In his heart, Guy understood, today, he would need to go beyond his previous limits. He would need to open the fifth gate. Chen watched as Guy struggled, his body barely holding on. He couldn't understand why the young man was so determined to keep going. In the midst of the clash, he spoke up, "Give up, Guy. You're not cut out to be a ninja. You don't have the strength for it." "No. I'll never give up." Guy roared. His father, Might Due, had worked tirelessly for 20 years and still died a genin. No one had ever recognized his efforts, but he never gave up. For the sake of taijutsu, for the dream he inherited from his father, for everything he cherished, Guy could not give up. At that moment, something ignited inside him. Fueled by unshakable belief, the energy around his body surged. The 8 gates aura intensified, and the previously locked 5th gate began to tremble. "Chen-sensei. I only have enough strength left for one final blow. I'm going to pour everything I have into it, and I will prove that I'm right." Chen remained calm, unmoved. He didn't believe Guy could break through the Dragon God's might. Guy gathered the last of his chakra and forced it into the 5th gate. A loud bang echoed through the air. The 5th gate, Gate of Limit, opened. With its power, Guy's speed finally matched the eye of the Dragon God. He spotted the opening. Leaping high into the air, he locked onto the eye of the storm, the technique's only weakness. Channeling all the strength of the 5th gate, all his will, all his belief, into a single punch, he struck. His fist collided with the center of the Dragon God. The air trembled. Shockwaves rippled across the battlefield. Chen had assumed this would end like the last 2 times, with Guy sent flying, but this time, something was different. But what Chen hadn't expected, was that Guy didn't get blown away. Instead, he held his ground, matching the Dragon God of Leaf blow for blow. Chen could hardly believe it, his Dragon God technique was starting to falter. The raw power radiating from Guy's punch had made the once stable jutsu begin to unravel. The Dragon God of Leaf, teetered on the brink of collapse. How? Chen thought in disbelief. Where did he get this kind of strength? And then, with a burst of chaotic air currents, the dragon god shattered for the first time. Guy landed back on the ground. As he saw the legendary technique break before him, a peaceful smile spread across his face. He had done it. He had defended his belief. Then, completely exhausted, he collapsed unconscious. Chen stared at the young man, his gaze complex and unreadable. He was shaken. No one, not a single soul, had ever seen through the secrets of the dragon god before. Even someone who knew its weakness wasn't supposed to have the strength to break it. And yet, this boy had done exactly that. Chen could only admit to himself, perhaps this child really does have something worth protecting, something even more important than his own life. This time, he didn't walk away. Instead, he waited by Guy's side until he woke up. He was genuinely curious, where did this unshakable resolve come from? When Guy finally came to, the two sat down and exchanged stories. Chen opened up about the death of his former student, also a taijutsu user, and the guilt that had haunted him ever since. Guy, in turn, told Chen-sensei about the source of his beliefs. My father once told me, Guy said, that one day, everyone must be willing to give their life for what they treasure most, was struck by those words. Suddenly, everything made sense. Maybe, his student had felt the same way. But in the end, Guy had gone even further, he had surpassed him. Chen smiled, quietly thinking, with that kind of conviction, this boy will undoubtedly become a taijutsu master greater than me. Hearing this acknowledgement from the strongest taijutsu user alive, Guy was overjoyed. His confidence in his future soared. And then came a turning point. Chen passed on the secret techniques of the dragon god of Leaf to Guy. He explained that he was already old and no longer wished to appear in the public eye. The future, he said, belonged to the younger generation. He asked Guy to carry on his legacy. To make sure the dragon god wouldn't vanish from the world. Guy bowed deeply, overwhelmed with gratitude. He promised to never reveal that Chen-sensei was still alive, and swore to carry on and improve the legendary technique. Chen said nothing more. He simply waved a hand, signaling that it was time for Guy to go. Guy had finally obtained the technique he had dreamed of learning for so long. And nearby, quietly observing, Nan had learned it too. While it may have seemed like Nan was simply standing off to the side, he knew the truth. Without his presence and guidance, it would have been incredibly difficult for Guy to reach this point on his own. What surprised Nan most, however, was that Chen had personally taught the technique to Guy. In the original story, even Li never learned it in the end. Nan had assumed that he'd have to master it himself first, then find a way to pass it on to Guy. But this outcome was even better, Chen himself had passed the torch. Just as Nan had planned. Sure, there had been a few bumps along the way, but in the end, both he and Guy had gotten everything they wanted. Now, Nan could confidently say, there were few people left in the ninja world who understood taijutsu better than him. He had even helped free Chen from the emotional burden he'd carried for years. It was, truly, the best possible outcome. Afterward, Nan escorted Guy back home. Using medical ninjutsu, he treated the damage Guy's body had sustained from using the 8 gates, and then quietly left. He needed rest. And more importantly, he needed to review everything he had just learned from Chen. With this new knowledge in hand, he could finally resume his long-paused development of nintaijutsu.
Thanks for listening to Naruto, starting with EMS. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a like and share it with other Naruto fans. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more fanfics and audiobooks. If you want early access to next part, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/MV1717. See you in the next episode.